Okay, welcome to this session on national policies on MOOCs. Yesterday you already had a session on institutional policy, so what higher education institutions have as a policy for MOOCs. And of course that's influenced by the national policies as well. And there was some European surveys about what's happening in Europe. And if you look at the number of higher education institutions that are involved in MOOCs or becoming involved in MOOCs, that's much higher than in the US. In the US it's about 12% of the higher education institutions are involved. And in Europe that differs between 30 and 60%. So that's a large difference between the US and Europe. But the difference between countries in Europe is also fascinating. For example, in Germany, where there isn't a national policy, and Hans will elaborate on this a little bit more, the average amount of higher education institutions is about 30%, 25-30%. And the same counts, for example, in Poland, where the number is relatively low. Comparable, for example, to France, where there is a governmental involvement in MOOCs, and Katrien will talk about it later on in her talk. So this session is about why or why not are governments involved in MOOCs? What are the main reasons to stimulate online education, MOOCs? And what is the policy specific in some countries? We start with Maria from the Spanish Ministry about the Spanish policy. Maria. And Katrien.
Good morning. Well, first of all, thank you, Darco, for your introduction, and thank you for the invite by the organization to be here today, sharing with you all, and thank you all for being here. As Darco was saying, I am from the Spanish Ministry of Education. I am the head of the online teacher training unit and the social networks unit, and we are the ones that are launching MOOCs in the ministry in Spain. They've asked me to summarize the Spanish policy in 10 minutes, which is very easy because there is not a Spanish policy on massive open online teacher training. But there is a road map of 5 years of work launching massive open online courses and other open online courses that I will be explaining to you in these 10 minutes. We started, why then? You are going to be wondering why MOOCs or other kind of open online teacher training in Spain if there is no official policy on that kind of training. Well, back in 2012, the Ministry of Education thought that we could outline a strategic framework for teacher professional development, which at the time was quite closely aligned with what the European Union policies were doing. The famous Education and Training 2020 program, the Rethinking Education proposal back in 2012 led us to do something about it. And we've been rethinking education from that time. In that strategic framework for the teacher professional development, there were 3 lines of work. First line was to take into account not only continuous professional development, but initial teacher training, and to try and move towards a model based on competencies and not on hours of being in front of a computer. And that is what we did with our massive open online teacher training. That was maybe the closest line of work and the closest reason why we decided to launch MOOCs. Second line of work was also to try and evolve teacher training to open collaboration, to peer-to-peer learning. And the third line of work was to design a common framework to certify solid learning. Not only, again, hours in front of a computer, but solid learning evidence which could be endorsed into official micro-credentials. We've been working on that for 5 years, as I'm telling you. And in that work, we came up in 2014 with the first 2 pilots, the first 2 MOOCs on personal learning environments and project-based learning. At the time, we trained around 20,000 teachers and people interested in the topics, because obviously when you have open online teacher training, it's open, so anybody can sign up and log in for our open courses. And it was a great boom in Spain that year. Over 20,000 teachers in Spain joined, very much interested in learning, only for the sake of learning, with the only motivation of learning, because no paper certificates were issued then and are not issued nowadays. From that time, when we had 2 pilot MOOCs, we've evolved, obviously, and we are now offering, I think, around 33 massive open online courses, and we have also evolved and created more open online initiatives. From the actual 4 or 5 week long MOOCs, we have seen a younger brother of the MOOCs born, and those are what we call NOOCs. I always say that NOOCs are MOOCs' younger brothers and sisters. Why? Because we thought that MOOCs were like, I always say that MOOCs in Spain have been like a free buffet, where people go and eat whatever they like, bits and pieces, pick here and there. And then lots of them started dropping out because they were not interested, or because simply the MOOC was too long, or simply because they were only going for the bits and pieces that they wanted. So we thought, then why not offering nano open online learning experiences in collaboration? And that's why NOOCs were born. NOOCs with 180-minute estimated effort, no more, 3 hours estimated effort, pursuing one goal, developing, acquiring one digital competence, and coming up with a digital artifact that endorses what you've learned. And from that, we've also evolved into what we call spooks. It's all very nice. Teachers are very fascinated by them, because they can talk about MOOCs, NOOCs, spooks, and that's all very funny for social networks, which is also encouraging for us, and it's a bit of marketing too. The spooks are self-paced, open online courses that you can do at your own rhythm, anywhere, anytime. They are always open, no estimated effort at all, again, for the motivation of learning. All the concepts underlying all these open online teacher training, is a digital framework, digital competence framework for teachers that we've recently published in 2016. This digital competence framework for teachers is based on the European Digital Competence Framework, DIGCOM. We have adapted it for the teaching profession. It is divided in 5 areas, 21 sub-competencies, and 6 competence levels. And this is the underlying concept for all our open online teacher training initiatives. What we are seeking is that teachers in Spain improve their digital competencies, professional competence after all, and we are offering them a roadmap of nano open learning experiences in collaboration that go from the lowest level in digital competence, A1, up to the highest level in digital competence, C1. And that is what we are actually working on at the moment. Being able to offer a personalized proposal of teacher training, trying to cover the teachers' needs and the teachers' learning styles too, so that when they finish a series of nano courses, they are sure that they have reached a certain level of digital competence. Because we do not really believe that the hours are important, the 3 models are competence-based. All of them are competence-based. It is also very important for us, social networks, and a connected approach. We are in a line of thought that teachers should learn from each other, teachers should learn autonomously, and teachers should be able to evidence everything they have developed or acquired in portfolios, learning diaries, blogs, and so forth. So in all these open online teacher training initiatives, which, by the way, are based on Open edX, obviously that's the learning management system that we have a team of mentors, facilitators, dynamization team that plays a key role because they are the ones that push participants to successfully get to the end. I call them energizers because apart from the fact that they've got lots and lots of energy and they are there for you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, they energize everybody else. They push participants, encourage them, guide them, accompany them. But we do not talk about tutors because teachers are tutors themselves and they can learn from each other. In that line as well, we host lots and lots of live events. We do a lot of spreading the word out on social networks. Like every week we have live roundtables or live webinars or Twitter chats or flipped Facebook events where teachers exchange their doubts, their practices, their artifacts, they interact, connect, and the beauty of it all is that when all these training periods finish, all these communities of practice, professional learning communities of practice, are still alive and they keep active and they keep up exchanges. And that's why we think this is added value to our online teacher training initiatives. But apart from the dynamic facilitators, energizers, the peer-to-peer assessment is also key in our MOOCs. We do not have experts that say, well, this is it, and I am assessing you with this grade or these other scores, but it's peer-to-peer assessment too. And it is your own colleagues that are actually evaluating your work with only one aim, helping you enrich it. Of course, all this competence-based model cannot be certified with a piece of paper that says 60 hours or whatever. And that's why we use digital badges. We have come up with a backpack that is there for you to manage, store and share micro-credentials that we issue when our participants have finished their MOOCs, their nano courses, their self-paced online training. Because we believe these micro-credentials are the best way to actually acknowledge that participants have achieved a series of goals, have developed or acquired a series of competencies and skills, and that they have proved it. And that's why portfolios play a key role. Our backpack, which has been fully developed in the Ministry of Education, is a safe, open place, fully compatible with any open standards. For example, you can export your badges from our backpack to Mozilla Backpack and the other way around. You can bring your badges from Mozilla to ours. You can organize them in collections. You can export them to your portfolio learning diary. You can spread them in the social networks too. And recently, this is just a piece of news, yesterday, apart from being a place to store your micro-credentials that acknowledge competencies, skills, and so forth, we have just developed a badge editor inside the backpack. So from tomorrow onwards, anybody, any school, educational administration, institution, anybody who wants to use our open backpack just has to say so. And apart from issuing badges, you will also be able to edit, design, and create your own badges there with an editor that we've just developed and finished with it yesterday. It is also important to say that all these developments that we carry out, yes, 1 minute, that we carry out in the ministry, obviously, are backed up by the educational authorities in the autonomous communities with whom we regularly talk and we regularly reach agreements so that both the backpack and all the open online teacher training initiatives are nationwide. You know, it is difficult sometimes because there are 17 ways to do things in Spain, but the open spirit of it all is that it is available for everybody, not only teachers in Madrid or the north of Spain or the south of Spain, but nationwide. And that's all for now. If you have questions or whatever, I will be more than happy to answer after everybody else has delivered. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Juriaan. You are the Senior Policy Officer from the Dutch Ministry of Education and Culture. Oh, that one. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah, I know. So he will talk about the Dutch policy on open and online education, so not specific on MOOCs.
Thank you, Darco. Good to be here. We're going to talk about the open and online educational policy of the Dutch Ministry of Education. MOOCs is an important part of it, and it started all with MOOCs. We saw MOOCs coming up, and we heard the two CEOs this morning talking about the coming up of MOOCs as well. And that was a point when we asked ourselves, will this be the disruptive thing as we all claim it to be? So once we saw it coming up, we thought about starting to think about the consequences that might cause it for our system of higher education. I think this morning one of the speakers, one of the CEOs told us it will not change education as much as it will change the labor market. And I think that sums up more or less the point at where we are at right now as well as a ministry. We're not afraid of the normal regular student who is between 18 and 22 years, as the other speaker told us this morning. We're not afraid that this might affect his world completely. It will affect the way of study. It will affect the way we can base our knowledge on. We can increase our knowledge, but it will not get rid of the bricks and mortars he told us about. We think it is the same way. But there's an important thing we immediately said, our minister immediately said when we saw MOOCs coming up, when we saw digitalization of higher education coming up. These are great opportunities, especially as it comes to the quality of higher education. So that's why we quite soon formulated some goals on that. One of the specific goals we set is by 2025, all teachers in our higher education share their teaching materials. So that's the open part of the higher education. What we also said is we want the digitalization of our education to make our education even better, from good to excellent. Our education is more or less good. We have, our system is a bit different than in other countries, but we have more or less 13 or 14 research universities and around 35 what you can call universities of applied sciences. Mostly the research universities are pretty active in this, and they are, more or less all of them are in top 200 charts. So our higher education is good, but we can get it to excellent. And digitalization, MOOCs, everything that's comes into digitalization can help to get us there. So what we try to do, how do we reach these goals? What is our policy? Well, first of all, we try to stimulate a movement. Sounds a bit vague, but we try to both bottom up and top down stimulate universities, but also teachers to step into the world of digitalization. How do we do that? Well, for instance, there is a program, there is a stimulating fund, open and online. So we give grants to teachers who have an idea, who come up with a MOOC or have an idea to incorporate a MOOC into the regular education. they can hand in and in a call for proposals, make us a proposal, and they can get a stimulating fund. But there's one extraordinary thing in it well, it helps us make the top-down part. We want the boards of universities, we want them to say, well, we support this as well. We want them to come up with a vision on digitalization. Yeah, so what we also want is the teachers who come up with a good idea is go to your board members and ask them to co-finance as well for 50%. That's what we ask them. So we also ask the board members of the universities to come up with a vision on their digitalization as well. Another really, really important part of our policy is that we want to cut legislative boundaries. So we do not want legislation to stand in the way of innovation. That's really, really important. So the minister told the universities in 2014, we will not come up with extra legislation for the upcoming years. So we want to stimulate the universities to experiment, and we want to give them the room for that. So for instance, there was this in legislative way, there was well, it was comprehensive for courses to 25% of their contact hours should be in the university, inside of these bricks and mortar. Yeah, and so we skipped that. We cut this legislative part to make sure that universities could experiment with their MOOCs. So I told in a short way about the simulating fund, open and online. So there is funds available, and well, the good thing is that we get a lot of requests. The sad thing is that we can't say yes to all of them because the funds are too small, it turns out. One really important part as well is that we fund research. Yeah, so there's a big research on MOOCs going on as well. At the same time, we started a stimulation fund to make sure to see what the effects of MOOCs on education will be. Well, that's basically it, what our policy line is. So, thank you.
Thank you, Juriaan. It's nice to see that there is a broader view on not only on MOOCs but also on stimulating the quality of education and on online education. The next speaker is Katrien. Katrien is from, you are well known from FUN, or it's not FUN anymore, it's GIP FUN MOOC, if I pronounce it correctly, but that's not...
No, that's just the name of the structure, but
yeah, the structure.
institution, yeah.
And she will talk about the French initiative.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Just to come back to when the story started, it started in 2013 when our Minister of Higher Education decided to set up a digital strategy for higher education institutions. This digital strategy covers a couple of actions, lots of them concentrating in encouraging transformation of teaching and learning. And promote the development of online tools on campus. One action on this agenda was to create a shared MOOC platform. So back in 2013 was the hype cycle of the MOOCs. Everyone was creating platform. The American platform was ahead. They were in English. The data were hosted in the States. And in France, the minister was really keen to answer the bottom-up approach because some universities were piloting MOOCs, and they were asking us to create a platform that was in French, where the data would be hosted in France. So in terms of technology, we choose OpenEdX. We are absolutely delighted that OpenEdX was released the 1st of June 2013. It really helped us to start this project. We wanted to have a very strict data privacy policy on the platform, so the data are hosted in France. you probably know that Europe has strong policies in terms of data privacy. France is probably the strictest one. So we have a very strict protection of the learners' data. But, however, as you said, there is a very important issue about doing research on those data in terms of education, sociology. How do we learn? Can we learn better? How can we teach better tomorrow? So we anonymize the data and provide the data to the research labs for doing research on those data. In terms of editorial policies, this was a very important point. The universities who were starting to create MOOCs, they really wanted to have a shared platform where they would collectively manage the editorial policy on the platform. So the platform is open to all French universities. We, of course, have partners, and we have an editorial committee to integrate and to welcome partners. We started back to 2013 to define quality charter, and each professor who puts a MOOC on the platform has to follow this quality charter. And we created very early on in 2013 a community of practice with many people involved and lots of activities around. So the platform was launched in October 2013, and it quickly became quite a success. Probably not the success of the American and English platforms, because the French audience is not as large as an English-speaking audience can be. But anyway, we started with 25 MOOCs. We soon have 60 MOOCs, more universities joining. So the minister who started this project, some sort of a startup project incubated at the Ministry of Education, could not keep doing it like that. Of course, we had to give it away, the project, and to give it to an organization that should be created, that will still be funded, and that will develop partnership, will develop activities on the platform. So in 2014, we launched a public consultation among all the universities in France, and this independent organization, which is called Groupement d'Intérêt Public, anyway, it's a public institution, its name is FUN MOOC, and right now, this institution has 29 members, which represent almost all the French universities and grandes écoles, and which also have public partners, private and other public partners. And we have a strong network of people we work with in universities. We have right now more than 300 courses on the platform, coming from more than 100 institutions. 1 million learners coming in many countries. The point that we are very interested in is that we have 16% of African learners on the platform, mainly the French-speaking learners, and this is, of course, a very important issue for French universities in terms of their development in the Francophone world. So if I summarize in this slide what are the main objective of our organization. Of course, we are a platform provider, but we start doing much more than that from the very beginning. First of all, we really have a role to boost the French community. We have this very strong network of producers, IT guys, instructional designers, vice presidents in all our partners that we work with. We have a support team. We support universities. We support MOOC producers. We do lots of training. We share methodologies. We share best practices. We do all these things that create a community around the initiative. The second objective that we have is, of course, to encourage new uses. All the universities started by doing MOOCs open online for free, you, your son, your colleagues, etc. We, of course, moved to certification. We do certification with a proctoring solution that Yves presented yesterday in another session. Some universities give ICTS for those certificates. We try to encourage universities to join together to create collection, to create series. We have a series that is carried on by a university that gives a diploma. It's a new degree from University of Lyon. And then, of course, we see that universities develop new usage of their MOOCs, reusing them on the classroom, using them for lifelong learning, continuous education. So to help them to develop those activities, we launched 2 platforms, which are the same as FUN, but for these private purposes, FUN Campus, which are for the academic MOOC, and FUN Corporate, which are for the corporate MOOCs for the companies who wants to buy and use for their own purposes the MOOCs that the university have been created on the FUN platform. The third activity that we have is really to try to foster partnership. We have a couple of partnerships with the socio-economic actors, partnership with higher French public institutions, with startups, and we also have quite a few international partnerships. In the last 2 slides, I will just point out very, very briefly, because I see that Darco is looking at me. So we have partnership with socio-economic actors. I think this is very interesting, because see, FUN is some sort in between the socio-economic world on one side and universities on the other side. And in France, I think what happens around FUN helps the economic sector to realize that something was going on in universities that has some values, that those universities were able to create courses that have value for their own business, for the training of their employees. So we have a couple of really strong cooperation where we ask universities to create MOOCs to fill the needs of those different actors. The third, so I'm not going to go into details because I have no time. I'm just going to point out the one we have with the National Agency for Environment. They decided to create MOOCs for the building construction field, where they have big issues on training on sustainable development. And so they decided to create MOOCs to help workers in this field to understand what are the issues of environmental development, renovation, respecting constraints of save energy and so on and so forth. And they decided to do that on a platform of their own. So what we did was to help them to set up the platform. It's an open edX platform. It's hosted by FUN, but it's with this MOOC Bâtiment Durable, which means sustainable building construction, and they develop their own activities there. Of course, there are strong issues about internationalization. First of all, we see more and more universities joining together with international partners to co-design MOOC. We also see universities, I'm thinking, for example, of a couple of universities in Morocco who decided to reuse a MOOC that has been created on the platform. It's a MOOC on entrepreneurship. They decided to use this MOOC to train doctorate, PhD students in their universities. So, of course, there are a couple of issues about how you contextualize, how you have an adaptation of the MOOC to fit this specific need. And then we have a strong cooperation with the Moroccan government because we set up a MOOC platform for the Moroccan universities. It was launched last November. It will be released openly to the world next November. Between these 2 periods of time, the universities in Morocco are creating their own MOOCs, and they are creating their MOOCs for their own students, because as you probably know, they have in Africa and but in other places in the world, very big issues of growing number of students. So digital technologies and online courses to help having a flipped classroom environment is very important for those students to learn better. So that's what we have been doing with them with this white label platform. And with that, I thank you for your attention, and I give the floor to my colleague.
Thank you, Katrien. The next speaker and the final speaker is Hans from the Technische University in Munich, and he will talk about what's happening in Germany, both at the state and national level.
Great, thanks a lot. We're a little bit short on time, but I try to be not too much in a hurry. So I will talk on the national level, on the state level, on the university level about policies. And so in Germany, perhaps some numbers and facts on the German higher education system. So we have 2.8 million students and had a large gain within the last 10 years. So they gained about, the numbers raised about 40%. We have around 430 universities and 18,000 degree programs. This number really doubled after the Bologna changes, I would say. We have public and private institutions. We have the academic freedom. So our professors have the right to determine the content of the lectures and publish the results of the research without prior approval. That's a little bit different to other countries. And in the middle, I would say the main issue why we don't have a national policy is we have a decentralized educational system. So we have 16 federal states with each one has its own laws and own specification, and though we have some guidance, I would say, from the national level of Germany, but there are different rules on each of the federal states in Germany. But there are lots of challenges with our system. So we have on the one hand the demographic change, we have increasing demands for qualified personnel, for example with IoT, and we have high entry rates of students, we have public budget which doesn't raise a lot, we have lots of international competition, and so there was thought we need something, we need a digital turn, and so we need a forum where we could discuss these facts, and for that there was the German Forum for Higher Education in the Digital Age founded, and is by three, I would say, three institutions. It was the main drivers for it. It was a Stifterverband for the Deutsche Wirtschaft. It was Wissenschaft, it was the Zentrum für Hochschulentwicklung and the German Rectors Conference, and it was financed by our federal Ministry on higher education. And so we had a platform for 3 years with around 70 experts who discussed quite a lot of the issues. There were 6 working groups, and the action is still going on. There is a funding for the next 5 years. And we have lots of material on our websites and did quite a lot of activities. For example, we had events, we had networking and cooperation, we had lots of social media working papers done. So there were about 26 working papers which focus on the challenges in the different fields, for example, within the new technologies or the new business models, and there should be guidelines for the university and the federal state and the national policymakers to help them to address the issues. But we wanted to be a little bit more on a holistic approach, not only focus on the massive open online courses, because we heard it today, there are new buzzwords, something like MOOCs and spooks and whatever. I really am in favor for the MOOC. There are the Munich open online courses, you know, because there are sister university, LMU and TUM, but you know, they're not really defined, and normally they should be defined by the content and by the stuff you want to educate, and so by the educators. But there was a final report, it was translated to English, so it's just brand new. It was published, I think, the last 2 days, so you can find it on the website. And there is a short summary on the working groups, on all the results, and on the other hand, on the recommendation and courses for action. And you can perhaps compare it with your national strategies if you have already solved some issues, or if you're still working on it. It would be great if you can interact and connect to each other. And we have ongoing activities, for example, and peer-to-peer counseling. So universities could apply to be counseled by other universities, and we are now setting up the groups, but there were a very high number of the German universities who applied for a consultation. And for example, there are ongoing events, something like the Global Learning Council Summit, which will be at the end of June in Berlin. It's a really worldwide forum, and you can apply for it. There's still places left, so perhaps you have time at the end of June and come to Berlin and discuss with us the issues there, which are on a worldwide level in the field of education. So this was a national approach. On the, I would say, state approach, for example, in Bavaria, we have the Bavarian Virtual University, which is in 2000 founded network of all universities and University of Applied Sciences in Bavaria. There are 31 members, and they have different aims, for example, to be a complement program. So it should be really something more than just the courses in class. On a digital level, it should be something on a complement level. And it's not a degree program, for example, there it's an add-on. But you can get ECTS credits, and we are there in different discussion rooms, forums, and for example, I'm on the program committee, and Martin Wörsing there is chair of the program committee, and we're in the strategic group there, and we're discussing options of MOOCs being involved in the program there, but we're still on the discussion level because we say it has to be on a high level, it has to be on a supervised e-tutor level, and we have very high quality standards, and there we will see the next month, I would say, or years where we want to focus the Virtual University of Bavaria. But to be frank, it's kind of a success story. We're working there for 17 years, and it was before we called it web-based training and MOOCs and stuff like that. It was something like we make online education, and it's something like a benefit for our students which are enrolled in German or in Bavarian universities. It's not for external students, so we're still discussing to open it up, but it was first just focused on a Bavarian level. So there are some numbers. We have 300 professors involved, 860 courses, for example, quite a lot of students there. There are more statistics on it. Due to time, I just want to skip it a little, but you can see it in the slides. And on the last level, I just want to talk about the policies at the Technische University of Munich. They are focused since quite a lot of years, since 2002, on the vision of the digital university. And so we have there different aspects and I would say clusters. So we said on the one hand we have to be on a digital level in research and teaching, but on the other hand we have to be on the campus management level too, and for sure on the infrastructure. You need infrastructure that you can use digital elements, for example. If there are no Wi-Fi, if there is no plug-in potential, there's quite an issue because you want to focus normally on your students on site and not only on the international ones which are via internet there. So we built up several programs, for example, our MOOCs for Masters, which is focusing, doing some kind of marketing to show external people what we're doing at TUM to attract future master students to TUM programs, and we're quite successful there. So we have, for example, just met a student from Nigeria who did a course, a MOOC on quality management at TUM, and then he applied for a master degree program at TUM, and now he's a student at our university. And I think there's quite a lot of stories you can tell from your universities too, and for that I think the format of online education with small nuggets of wisdom somehow, but on a high level is very important. And for that, for example, we did on our guidelines a handbook making a MOOC at TUM. It's online, you can download it, and it just gives you an overview of checkpoints and checklists and the process descriptions, how we produce a MOOC at TUM, and perhaps we can discuss it a little bit in the next few days with you if you have some more details or more issues where you can improve our work, where we can learn something from your side. So now this was roughly 10 minutes. I hope it wasn't too much for you, and I think we have time for some questions. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Hans. And I think that's very much in line what the presentation of this morning from Simon Nelson was, is that MOOCs are just a tool, one important tool in the digital transformation of higher education. I will like to give the floor to the audience and have some few questions before the coffee break. Yes.
Hi, I'm Nigel Smith from FutureLearn. I was interested by Juriaan's point that you're being quite accommodating in sort of relaxing legislation to sort of enable innovation and teaching online. And what's been I found interesting, for instance, I was in Malaysia last year talking to some of our partners there, and they found it very frustrating that the ministry was really funding MOOCs to quite a significant amount, but was mandating that they had to be the length of a semester. So, you know, they were getting money to develop MOOCs, but they weren't developing the best MOOCs because they were constrained by the government policy. So I just want to sort of applaud, you know, what you're doing and kind of, I think, being flexible and actually taking into account how these courses, you know, are very different from what people have been using. But I also wanted to ask the others of you who are, you know, work in government, how you are thinking about the fact that online teaching is very different from what you may be used to, and how flexible you're being with policies so educators don't feel constrained.
I would just like to say thank you for the compliment. I really agree with you, and I think the room for experimentation should stay. So I'm really curious how the other governments like to react on that.
Well, having not having a policy is the best for innovation. Yeah. So it's just the best because they actually. I mean, you can do things. You can experiment. You can advance. You can investigate, research, and improve, and give your teachers the best. Well, or try to give your teachers the best cover for all learning styles and keep on researching. The moment there is a law, innovation is dead. That's my point of view, personal point of view. Okay.
At EADTU level, we had a discussion with the European Parliament and CULT, and they are preparing a statement from the European Parliament in making legislations, but also the quality assurance frameworks in each country to be more in favourable of the new modes of teaching and digital education. So there's still work to do. We have made an inventory at the EADTU level of different countries, what are the hindering factors in both quality frameworks or legislation at the national level. So they are still there. And like Maria is saying, perhaps there should be no legislations in this one, but there should be some kind of quality control at national level. So therefore, we should have a discussion with European Parliament, but also at national level. Thank you for the question.
Hi, I'm Gabby from the UK. It's a question for Juriaan. I was fascinated by something you said that all higher education teachers will be required to share their materials. I'd like to know what the plan is for that. Are they going to be open educational resources, licensing, copyright? How are you going to deal with that?
Yeah, exactly. So an important thing I maybe didn't add to that was that we will not make it top-down legislative, so we won't step into the wrong instruments again. But what we'll try to do is try to stimulate the movement and try to get the movement going by, well, more or less we started a few programs, and our intention is that these programs come from bottom up and are also the board members of universities are really important that they have to say, well, we agree to this and we sign up in this assignment. What we try to do is, well, more or less open educational resources can be a really good instrument to improve the higher education quality, and we have to try and to convince teachers that it can not only be a burden, maybe it can be a burden for the first few days, as all innovations can be. You have to get used to them, but they can also be a really good well, influence on your teaching materials. You can well, we talked about peer-to-peer feedback. That's a peer review system which we are used to in research as well. Why not try to do that as well on teaching materials? We see that going on a lot in the Netherlands, as not in the higher education, but in other terms of education. But we also like to see that going on, getting started in the higher education as well. And we see it starting right now. Yeah.
So there was another question at the back here.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Eran. I'm from Campus AL, Israel's national platform. So first, thank you for very interesting facts, notion you've shared with us. I have two questions. One is for all panel participants. So in last edX Summit at Paris, Anand was speaking about unbundling and rebundling universities, meaning students would be able to build their degree using some universities' courses. So my question is, do you see that in reality, universities establishing connections and sharing MOOCs knowledge and their professors' times? And the second question is for Juriaan. around your Ministry of Education project, who is actually developing the MOOCs? We know that for universities, for the most part, they have their own units. In Israel, we see that schools don't have the capacity of actually producing the MOOCs. Thanks.
Okay, I get for your first question. We in France we start seeing experiments. For example, two schools in healthcare who started to decide that they have been creating two different courses and they will exchange and share those courses for their own students. So this is probably something that's happening. However, for the moment, I see more activities of universities talking together to try to exchange courses or make sure that a course where you get a certificate and ICTS will be recognized in another school, which is not exactly your question, because your question, in my opinion, is will the old system allow the student to move freely? And at least for France right now, I see initiative where universities start to create this movement, but with their own ways, I would say.
I can add perhaps some ideas or things to think at. There's even fraud on edX certificates, for example. So you have always to think on how to be sure who's sitting on the other side of the computer and how to prove some stuff. And in former times, students were free to buy or rent or go to the library and read different books. So why shouldn't they use different MOOCs right now, for example, or different online material to foster their knowledge somehow? So the main question is, how do you, on the one hand, the authentication and the certification on the online stuff? All other stuff we don't need to regulate somehow, because we have young, smart people who are attracted, who are the Generation Y or whatever you call them. They're using the internet. And so you don't need any other rules from my point of view.
Yeah, so maybe the second question then. Well, I think it's a fair point. I think it's a thing that we come across in the Netherlands as well. We've got, well, for instance, we've got the TU Delft, which is a big technical university who is well, upfront as it comes to digitalization and innovation. So, well, they've decided for themselves to be an early adopter and to invest in it. We didn't do much about that instead of cutting legislative boundaries. But on the other hand, you've got, well, much smaller universities of applied sciences. We also, well, don't prioritize digitalization, which I can understand, because they have got to do with lots of different issues the TU Delft doesn't have to come up with. So there are different. Well, not everyone is upfront. That's what I'm trying to say. And that also, we cannot do anything about that. We came up with this stimulation fund. There is some money in it, but it's not enough. So, yeah, that's what we got to deal with. I think that's reality, and we are not in a position to change all of it. What we can do is at least start a dialogue, and that's what we've done. And we try to, you know, get the dialogue bigger and bigger. So board members and teachers get to see digitalization as well, a priority for them. Yeah.
So we need to finalize, because next session is starting at 12 o'clock, and then we have now 20 minutes for the coffee break. So I don't want you from that. So thank you.